7 hard truths behind you never know how much you can do until you try. Jackma's reality check. You don't need motivation. You need a moment that corners you. Because right now, you're living inside a story that sounds responsible. I'll start when I'm ready. It's polite. It's safe. It's also a trap. And here's the uncomfortable twist. Most people never feel ready. Not because they're weak, but because ready is a fake finish line your brain invented to protect your identity. If you never try, you never risk discovering you're not as good as you hoped. If you never try, you also never risk discovering you're far better than you feared. That's why this quote, "You never know how much you can do in your life until you try," hits so hard in the US. It doesn't flatter you. It dares you. It's not saying you're special. It's saying you're unknown. And unknown is the scariest thing in the world when your whole life is built on being predictable. So let's make this personal. Picture your life in 2 timelines. In one timeline, you keep planning. You watch people who started later than you pass you. You collect advice like it's progress. You make your fear sound like strategy. In the other timeline, you try, messily, publicly, imperfectly, and you learn a brutal secret. The first version of you is always supposed to be bad. That's not a flaw. That's the price of entry. Jackma didn't become Jackma because he was born confident. He became Jackma because he kept showing up while looking ridiculous. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good. That's the doorway. Here's the part no one says out loud. Try is not a single action. It's a lifestyle of controlled embarrassment. Americans love the idea of hustle, but we secretly worship competence. We want to skip the stage where we look like beginners. We want to post the after without surviving the during. We want a clean origin story. But real trying is ugly. Real trying means sending the email you're afraid of, posting the first video that gets 17 views, applying for the job you're underqualified for, launching the store that your cousin laughs at, walking into the gym when you don't know where anything is, calling the client after you've already messed up, raising your hand in a room where you feel small. And the twist is this. The embarrassment is not proof you shouldn't do it. The embarrassment is proof you finally are. So let's talk about what this quote really means in the modern US context, where attention is currency, where everyone looks confident online, where failure feels like a public record. You never know how much you can do until you try is not motivational poster energy. It's a warning. It's telling you your current self-assessment is unreliable. Because your assessment is built on evidence from a life where you avoided risk. You can't measure your potential using data from your comfort zone. That's like judging your strength by lifting only empty boxes. Your brain will say, "I can't do that." But what it really means is, "I haven't done that yet." And those are 2 totally different sentences with 2 totally different futures. Now, here's a reality check you might not like. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they never place enough bets to let randomness work for them. That's it. The world is not a fair judge of talent. It's a loud judge of consistency. And consistency is built from attempts. You don't need one perfect try. You need many imperfect tries. The best creators, founders, athletes, and leaders in America have one thing in common. They've attempted more than the average person can emotionally tolerate. They don't have less fear. They have a higher tolerance for the feeling of fear. That's why they look confident. Confidence isn't a trait. It's a side effect. The side effect of doing the thing while you're still scared. But you know what stops you? Not laziness. Not lack of intelligence. A hidden contract you made with yourself. I will only do what I can be proud of immediately. That contract feels like self-respect. It's actually self-sabotage dressed in nice clothes. Because anything worth doing has a beginner phase that doesn't match your self-image. You think you're protecting your dignity, but you're really protecting your ego. And your ego will happily keep you broke, bored, and small, as long as you never have to feel embarrassed. That's the trade. That's the deal. And if you've ever wondered why you feel stuck even though you know what to do, it's because you're negotiating with a part of yourself that values comfort more than growth. Jackma's quote, at its core, is an identity attack. It's not saying, go try. It's saying, you don't know who you are. And the US culture amplifies this because we're raised to label ourselves early. The smart kid, the shy kid, the athletic one, the creative one, the responsible one. You carry those labels into adulthood like they're permanent. But most labels are just childhood coping strategies that turned into prison bars. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not good at math. I'm not the type to be on camera. I'm not disciplined. I'm not lucky. Notice how every one of those sentences contains a coffin nail. I'm not. Trying is the hammer that pulls those nails out. When you try, you don't just gain skill, you gain permission to change your identity. Let's make this painfully specific. Imagine you want to start something, anything, a YouTube channel, a side business, a fitness goal, a career shift, a creative project. Your brain will immediately ask the wrong question. Will it work? That question is poison because it forces you to predict a future you haven't earned data for. The right question is, can I survive the first 30 attempts? Because that's where almost everyone quits. They don't quit at the end. They quit at the beginning. They quit where results are silent. They quit where nobody claps. They quit where their friends don't understand what they're doing. They quit where the algorithm ignores them. They quit where progress is invisible. And then they call it being realistic. That's not realism. That's fear management. Here's the twist. The universe doesn't reward you for trying once. It rewards you for becoming someone who tries as a default setting. That's why this quote isn't about a single brave moment. It's about building a life where the first move happens faster than the fear can talk you out of it. And yes, this is learnable. You can train it, not by thinking, by doing. The same way you train muscle, the same way you train reflexes, the same way you train a habit. You don't feel disciplined before you act. You act until discipline becomes your normal. Let's translate that into a simple framework you can actually use, because inspiration without structure is entertainment. Here are the 3 stages of try that change your life, and the first one will annoy you because it sounds too small. Stage 1. Micro tries. These are tiny actions that create proof, not progress, proof. Proof that you can move when you don't feel like it. Proof that fear doesn't kill you. Proof that you can handle discomfort. A micro try is filming 30 seconds instead of planning a 30-minute masterpiece. It's applying to one job instead of rewriting your resume for 3 weeks. It's making one sales call instead of building a brand. It's showing up for 10 minutes at the gym. Micro tries feel stupid because they don't match your ambition. That's why they work. They bypass the ego. And they build momentum without asking for permission. Stage 2. Public tries. This is where your life changes and where your ego screams. You ship something before it's perfect. You let people see your beginner version. You accept the awkwardness. This is the moment most Americans avoid, because we're trained to perform competence. But public tries are rocket fuel. The moment you go public, you gain feedback, accountability, and real stakes. You stop arguing with yourself in your head, and you start negotiating with reality. Reality is a better coach than your anxiety. Stage 3. Repeat tries. This is the real game. You try again after a bad result.
again after a quiet result, again after a win. You stop letting outcomes decide your identity. You become the type of person who tries because that's who you are. This is how talent is manufactured. This is how luck is attracted. Because luck loves motion. Luck hates hesitation.
Now let's expose the biggest lie you've ever believed about trying. That trying means committing. It doesn't. Trying means testing. You're allowed to test. You're allowed to experiment. You're allowed to be wrong. You're allowed to pivot. Americans romanticize certainty, but the most powerful people you'll ever meet are the ones who run experiments on their own life. They don't demand guarantees. They demand data. And the only way to get data is to try. Here's a thought that might sting. If you're waiting for confidence, you're waiting for the reward before doing the work. Confidence is not the ticket you need to enter the arena. Confidence is what you get after you've been hit a few times and realized you're still standing. That's why until you try matters. The quote doesn't say you never know how much you can do until you succeed. It says until you try. Because the win isn't the outcome. The win is the identity shift. The moment you stop being the person who wonders and become the person who acts. But what about fear? What about failure? What about being judged? Let's be honest, those are real. And here comes another twist. The fear doesn't go away. You get bigger, and the fear upgrades with you. New level, new devil. The difference is you learn to interpret fear correctly. Beginners treat fear as a stop sign. Professionals treat fear as a compass. If you're scared, it might be because you're about to do something that matters. The question isn't, how do I get rid of fear? The question is, can I move while fear is present? That's the skill. That's the muscle. That's the cheat code. Now let's bring Jackma back into this without turning it into a biography lesson. The reason his quote spreads across US audiences isn't because everyone wants to be a billionaire. It's because everyone has a private dream they've been treating like a guilty pleasure. The dream they don't say out loud, because saying it out loud makes it real. And if it becomes real, it can be rejected. So we keep it hidden. We protect it by never trying. And then we call that being mature. But deep down, you know the truth. You're not tired of work. You're tired of a life where your potential is never allowed to speak. So here's the real question. What are you pretending not to want? Be careful. Your answer is probably the exact direction you should try next. And yes, there's a strategy to trying so you don't burn out. Because try doesn't mean do everything. It means do the next thing. Pick one arena. One. Not 10. 1. Because scattered trying looks like movement, but feels like failure. Focused trying creates compounding returns. If you want a practical, US-friendly blueprint that fits almost any goal, use this. 30 days, 30 attempts, 1 metric. That's it. The metric is not money or fame. It's output. Number of reps. Number of uploads, number of pages, number of applications, number of workouts, number of conversations. Output is honest. Output doesn't lie to you. Output makes potential measurable. And now the brutal part. When you start trying, your life will feel worse before it feels better. Because you're leaving the comfort zone where you were good enough and entering the beginner zone where you're clumsy. Your brain will interpret that as danger. It will say, "See, this isn't for you." That voice isn't truth. That voice is withdrawal. You're withdrawing from comfort, and withdrawal always hurts. The only way through is repetition until discomfort becomes familiar. If you're still with me, here's your first action, right now. Not tomorrow, not Monday, right now. Name one thing you've been delaying. One. Then reduce it to a micro try you can do in under 10 minutes. Under 10. If it takes longer, you're negotiating again. Make it stupidly small. Then do it today. Because the goal of this first step is not progress, it's proof. Proof that you can move on command. Proof that you are not your excuses. You did it. You tried. Maybe it was small, 10 minutes, one upload, one application, one workout, one uncomfortable conversation. And now you're waiting for the universe to clap. But instead, something else shows up. Silence. Doubt. A weird emotional hangover. You check the numbers. You refresh the page. You look for proof that it mattered. And here's the twist nobody warns you about. The moment you try, your biggest enemy isn't failure. It's the backlash that comes after progress. Your old life doesn't just disappear because you decided to grow. It fights for survival. Your habits pull you back. Your friends test the new you. Your brain tries to restore the old normal. That's why Jackma's quote isn't a cute line. It's a doorway. Because once you try, you step into a new world where the rules change. In Chapter 1, the challenge was starting. In Chapter 2, the challenge is staying started. Let's name the real problem. Most people don't quit because they don't believe in the dream. They quit because they can't handle the emotional weather of the early days. They can't handle small results. They can't handle being ignored. They can't handle not knowing if it's working. They can't handle the identity whiplash, being the person who is becoming instead of the person who already is. And in America, where everyone's life looks polished online, the gap between your messy reality and someone else's highlight reel feels like proof you're losing. It's not proof. It's just the normal cost of building anything real.
So here are the 5 hidden forces that try to stop you right after you start, and the simple system to beat each one. Not motivation, not hype, a system. Because motivation is a spark, systems are engines. The first force is the comfort rebound. You try something hard, and your brain immediately tries to pay you back with comfort. It's the same reason people reward a workout with junk food, or reward a productive day with scrolling until 2 a.m. Your brain says, "Good job, now relax." But relax secretly means return to the old identity. That rebound is dangerous because it feels deserved.
You'll tell yourself you've earned a break, and you might have, but your old life uses breaks like a hostage negotiator. 1 day off becomes 3. 3 becomes a week, and then you wake up confused asking why you lost momentum, as if momentum is something you either have or don't have. Momentum is rented, and the rent is paid daily. Here's how you beat the comfort rebound. You create a minimum viable day. A baseline so small you can do it on your worst day, but so consistent it keeps your identity alive. Not a full workout, 10 push-ups. Not a full video, write 1 paragraph. Not a full business plan, contact 1 potential customer. The key is this: you don't negotiate with the baseline. You do it even when it feels pointless, because the baseline is not about results. It's about becoming someone who doesn't disappear when it gets hard. Americans love all-or-nothing transformation. That's why we fall apart. The baseline is how you stay in the game while your life is messy.
The second force is the social gravity trap. The moment you start changing, the people around you, sometimes the ones who love you most, start pulling you back without realizing it. Not because they hate you, but because your change makes their life feel unstable. If you start waking up early, they tease you. If you start saving money, they call you cheap. If you start learning a new skill, they call it a phase. If you start posting content, they ask why you're trying so hard. And you laugh it off because you want peace. But the joke lands like a tiny poison dart. You start shrinking to make the room comfortable again. Here's the twist. You don't need enemies to fail. You just need a familiar environment that rewards the old you.
So how do you beat social gravity?
You don't fight everyone. You build a boundary and a new tribe. The boundary is simple. You stop explaining your dream to people who only understand the old version of you. Explanation is a trap, because it turns your dream into a debate. Instead, you give short answers. I'm testing something. Just trying a new routine. Working on a project. You keep it boring. You protect it. Dreams are fragile early on, and not everyone deserves access.
Then you build a new tribe, one group chat, one online community, one friend who's also building. You don't need 10 people. You need one person who speaks the language of trying. Because when you have even one witness to your effort, your brain stops treating it like a fantasy.
The third force is the fake progress addiction. This one is sneaky. It feels productive, but it's actually avoidance wearing a suit. Fake progress is researching instead of doing, watching tutorials instead of practicing, designing logos instead of selling, tweaking your gear instead of shipping your work, planning the perfect calendar instead of making the first call. And in the US, where information is everywhere, fake progress is basically an endless buffet.
You can learn for years and never risk the one thing that creates growth: exposure. Real trying means exposure. Exposure to rejection, feedback, awkwardness, and reality. Here's the system to destroy fake progress. You follow the 80-20 rule of execution. 80% output, 20% input. If you consume for an hour, you must produce for 4. If you watch one tutorial, you must do one rep of the skill. If you read one thread, you must take one action. And you track output like a scoreboard. Not because you're obsessed, but because your brain lies. Your brain will tell you you're working on it, while you're really hiding from the discomfort of being judged. Output is the lie detector.
Now, the fourth force, the perfectionism shield. This is the most American kind of self-sabotage because it's socially acceptable. People praise high standards. They praise quality. They praise excellence. But perfectionism is often just fear in a tuxedo. It keeps you safe from the one thing that would actually help you: iteration. The perfect draft can't be criticized because it never exists. The perfect product can't be rejected because it never ships.
The perfect plan can't fail because it never touches reality.
And here's the brutal truth. Perfectionism doesn't make your work better. It makes your timeline longer. And the longer the timeline, the more likely you quit.
So what's the antidote? Deadlines plus constraints. You set a shipping date and you obey it. You create a rule like, this gets 2 revisions, then it goes out. Or, I'm posting 1 video every week no matter what. Or, I'll apply to 5 jobs before I rewrite my resume again. Constraints are uncomfortable, but they force speed. And speed forces learning. When you ship fast, you get feedback fast. When you get feedback fast, you improve fast. That's not theory. That's how every competitive industry in America works. Startups, content creators, athletes, salespeople. The winners aren't the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who make mistakes faster and recover faster. And then there's the fifth force, the one that blindsides people the hardest: the identity backlash. This is the moment you start getting small wins, tiny proof that your trying is working, and instead of feeling excited, you feel anxious. You start thinking, what if I can't keep this up? What if people expect more? What if I'm not really this person? So you self-sabotage. You skip a day. You miss the deadline. You pick a fight. You procrastinate. You don't do the follow-up. Why? Because success threatens the story you've been rehearsing for years. If you've always been the one who never gets ahead, then getting ahead feels like betrayal, like stepping into a life you don't emotionally recognize. Your brain would rather keep you in a familiar pain than risk an unfamiliar freedom. This is where Jackma's quote reveals its sharpest edge. You don't know how much you can do until you try. And when you try, you don't recognize the person you're becoming. That unfamiliarity feels dangerous. But it's not danger, it's growth. The solution is not more confidence. The solution is normalization. Now, let's put all 5 forces into one simple playbook you can run, starting today, without changing your entire life overnight. Call it the TRY system. 3 rules. Rule 1. One arena, one season. Pick one thing for the next 30 days, not 10, one. If you're building a channel, that's the arena. If you're building a business, that's the arena. If you're rebuilding your body, that's the arena. You can still live your life, but your primary growth energy goes into one arena. Because divided attention creates divided results. And divided results kill motivation. You want momentum? Focus. Rule 2. Daily baseline plus scheduled sprint. Baseline every day, sprint 3 times a week. Baseline is your minimum viable day. 10 minutes, 1 rep, 1 output. The sprint is when you go deeper, your longer workout, your content batch, your sales calls, your practice session. The baseline protects identity. The sprint builds capacity. Together, they create compounding. Rule 3. Track attempts, not outcomes. This is the biggest mindset shift. Outcomes are delayed and noisy. Attempts are immediate and controllable. You create a scoreboard, 30 days, 30 attempts. If you hit 30 attempts, you win the month, even if the numbers are low, because you're building the machine, not chasing the applause. And here's the twist. When the machine is built, the applause becomes inevitable. Let's make it feel real with a scenario you might recognize. Say you're starting a YouTube channel aimed at a US audience. Your first uploads are rough, the views are small. You watch other creators and feel behind. The fake progress addiction kicks in. You start obsessing over thumbnails, fonts, gear, the perfect niche. The perfectionism shield says, don't post this one, it's not good enough. Social gravity says, why are you doing this? Comfort rebound says, you worked hard, take a break. And identity backlash says, who do you think you are? If you follow the TRY system, here's what you do instead. Baseline daily. Write 1 hook, record 1 minute, design 1 thumbnail variation, or upload 1 short. Sprint 3 times a week. Batch scripts, record longer audio, edit multiple videos. Track attempts, 1 upload per week, 3 shorts per week, or whatever pace you can sustain. After 30 days, you'll have something most people never achieve. Proof. You'll know what topics hold attention, what hooks work, what thumbnails get clicks, what pacing keeps people watching. You won't be guessing anymore. You'll be operating. And that's what Jackma's line is really offering. Not inspiration, but information. You never know what you can do until you try, because trying generates evidence, and evidence changes identity. When you have evidence, you stop needing pep talks. You stop needing external validation. You stop needing permission. You become dangerous, in the best way, because your life is no longer built on what you think. It's built on what you've tested. Now, here's the final twist of Chapter 2, and it's the one people rarely accept. Trying doesn't guarantee you'll get what you want. It guarantees you'll become someone capable of handling whatever you get. That might sound like a consolation prize until you realize it's the whole point. Most people don't actually need the perfect outcome. They need self-respect. They need the quiet confidence that comes from knowing they showed up. They need the ability to look in the mirror and say, I did not abandon myself. That is priceless. And ironically, It's also what makes you more likely to succeed, because self-respect fuels consistency, and consistency fuels results. So if you want to honor the quote in a way that changes your life, don't make it a poster. Make it a contract. 1 arena, 30 days, daily baseline, 3 sprints a week, track attempts. And when your brain tries to pull you back, as it will, remember this. The discomfort you feel is not a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're leaving the old you behind. The old you will fight. Let it fight. You keep moving anyway, because now you know the truth that most people never learn. The limit you feel today isn't your limit. It's just the edge of what you've tried.